Hi everybody, I'm Dan York, along with James Lenze, the director of the Garden City Public Library, and Paul Werhane, he is the president of the Garden City Library Board, and we want to talk about a library millage that is on the November 5th ballot that would be used to construct a new library building. Is that correct, gentlemen?
Correct.
Yes.
All right, let me do this first. Let me read what the actual proposal is that will appear on the ballot on November 5th. And it is called an additional library millage proposal. Shall the tax limitation on all taxable real and tangible personal property in the city of Garden City, Wayne County, Michigan, be increased by amount not to exceed 1 mil or $1 per $1,000 of taxable value for a period of 10 years, 2020 to 2029 inclusive, as new additional millage for the purpose of providing funds for the design and construction of a new public library building for the Garden City Public Library and for all other library purposes authorized by law. Shall the proposed library millage be adopted, yes or no? So gentlemen, clear as mud. So let's talk about this. So currently, now first of all, let me explain up front, the purpose of this is solely informational. The purpose is not to try to sway voters to vote one way or another, and any of the programming we do during the election season has the same purpose. Here is the information. It's up to the voters to decide what they will do with that information. So I will start with you, James.
Yes.
Currently, the library has an operating millage.
Correct.
Explain how that works.
So the voters approved an operating millage of 1 mil for the library, and that's what we use to pay the daily bills, to pay the staff, to purchase the materials, to pay the utilities, the rent, and other charges from the city. It's basically what keeps our doors open for the public.
Okay, and about 15 years ago, and up to that point, the library had been a department of the city, correct?
Yes, we're still a department of the city.
But funded through the general fund.
We used to be funded through the general fund.
Right.
Now we're funded by the millage.
Okay. So, Paul, the library board that you're a member of now has a little more autonomy than the previous library boards or commissions that we had, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And so the library board has certain authority.
Well, we've always been in charge of the money,
Okay.
and we are in charge of everything that depends on the library. I mean, the personnel, the mayor used to appoint the library board. He no longer does that.
They're now elected.
They were elected.
And that's one of the provisions of the fact that your taxing mechanism changed, correct?
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the law, we went to another part of the law that allowed us to go for our millage on our own.
Okay. All right. So what you're looking for now, in addition to the 1 mil that is collected, and that has been renewed recently, and how long does that run for, by the way?
That runs for till 2032.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, that's
So that even outlasts the amount of the millage proposal that you have on the ballot currently.
correct.
All right. And the purpose of this now is for the construction of a new library, correct?
Exactly, right. So we were moved into the Maplewood Center about 13 years ago as a temporary measure. It's been 13 years, and we're still in that temporary building, and frankly, the infrastructure there is not suited to a modern public library. We don't have room for tutoring rooms. We don't have room for group study. We don't have sufficient electrical outlets. No place for people to charge their mobile devices. And if you ever tried to get around the library in a wheelchair, or it's just not feasible. It's not. We've crammed so much into that small space that you can't really maneuver around there. So it's not technically ADA compliant currently.
Okay. And the library building that you're in now is in Maplewood Center.
Yes.
And if you go back 50 years, it was essentially the library at Maplewood Elementary School with some modifications.
Where we are now, yes. Yeah.
Right. So obviously your square footage is much reduced from when there was a library on Middle Belt Road.
Right. We had about 12,000 square foot when we were on Middle Belt, and we currently have 6,700, I think, somewhere in that range, 6,500 or 700.
And that's packed full.
Yes, it is. We
Okay.
only got rid of about 20% of our materials when we moved over. So what we lost was space for people to sit, space for people to study, We kept all the computers and all the materials, but we have 2 study tables right now, and they're both very close to the picture story room, where it's probably the loudest area of
Sure.
the library, but it was the only place they would fit.
Okay.
So yeah, the library is not really conducive for studying.
The current facility. So Paul, the library board had to make the decision then to ask the public for a millage to be able to fund a new building, correct?
Right.
And what kind of thoughts went into this, and what kind of research and study went into this before you put it on the
we
ballot?
figured out the limitations. We can only go for total of 2 mills. That's under the law.
Okay.
And so we agreed that we should try for a millage to raise the money for a new library.
So when you say 2 mills, that means the operating millage plus this millage?
Right, yeah. Well, that's what the law allows.
Sure.
Two mills is the maximum.
Okay.
So that's what we've asked for, is the remaining 1 mill
That's allowed for.
That's allowed, yes.
Now the library board, and you might have to correct me on this, the library board is who owns the current piece of property over by the old Berger Middle School?
That's right.
Okay. So that's the intended home for this
That's the
new building?
location, right.
Okay. Now, one of the unusual things about this, James, is that you'll collect the money, or I shouldn't say you, but the library board will collect the money for 10 years before you put shovels in the ground. Explain why that is.
So since we're not bonding, we can't start the construction until we're ready to pay for the completed project.
Okay.
Our guess is that it will take about 10 years to collect enough to be able to complete the project.
Okay.
In the meantime, though, we can still and will be looking for corporate donations that may help us, and grants that may help us get to the targeted value sooner, in which case we would be able to build sooner. We feel that if this millage passes, we would be in a much stronger position to solicit donations from corporations, be able to show that there's community support,
Right.
and that we'll eventually get there, but please help us get there sooner. We think that's a much stronger asking point than.
And understanding that there will be costs associated with the maintenance of the building, but after 10 years you will have fully constructed the building, or will have the funds to fully construct the building, and you still then have commitment for the millage, the operational millage, for another 3 to 4 years after that 2029 day.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So,
And I assume between your office and between the library board, architects have been brought in, experts have been brought in to make presentations to you, tell you how much space you need and what your building, maybe not aesthetically, but what your building should look like from a design standpoint?
Yes.
yeah, so we had a team come in to do a space needs assessment. They actually felt that we needed something larger than the 12,000 square feet that the board is asking for. But the board wisely looked at it and said 12,000 square feet is what we can afford to operate under 1 mill in this city.
Okay.
So there's no sense building something larger than that. We won't be able to properly staff it and so forth. So they wisely chose to aim for a 12,000 square foot building. And we now have an architectural firm, Daniels and Zermatt, out of Ann Arbor. They've done a number of libraries within Southeast Michigan. All of them are beautiful, and I've spoken with the directors. They all said this is a good firm to work with. And they're now working with the library board to design some conceptual designs that, again, we can use to ask corporations for
Sure.
funding.
Why not expand or renovate where you currently are, or why not go into an existing building sooner or at the end of this 10-year period?
So to go into an existing retail building, for example, retail flooring has a architectural standard of being able to hold 100 pounds per square foot. Libraries, because of the weight of books, require 150 pounds per square foot.
Okay.
So the retail establishments just aren't designed to hold that kind of weight. So that makes any retail establishment we move into would require extensive renovations. To renovate at the Maplewood Center, the architects have told us would cost almost as much as building new.
Okay.
So, because there are a lot of obstructions of the walls, you have the 2 levels. You've got stairs to go down to the main part of our collection, and the problems with tying in with an old HVAC system,
Sure.
and bringing in a new system for the newer part of the building. They just said overall the cost would end up being about the same as to build the same square footage. So why stick with half of a building that's a lot of problems instead of going all new?
I think there's another factor there is
Sure.
that to add an addition to that building, they would have to remove the asbestos from the whole building, not just our area.
Okay.
And that almost makes it an impossible job to do. That's just money-wise, it would be very expensive.
And I imagine there are some conflicting uses too between what the library does and what the Maplewood Center does that creates some conflicts with what parts of the building to leave open and what parts of the building can be closed.
Yeah, so the only conflicts really are when one or the other is open and one's closed and one's open.
Sure.
So there are times when the library is open and the rest of the building is closed. There are times when they're open and we're closed. And those are a little bit of an issue as far as securing the building. But otherwise, it has been great sharing the building with the Community Resources Department. There's a lot of people who come for the senior activities and then come into the library for the resources we have available. And there are people who come into the library and then say, oh, I didn't realize there was a fitness center right here, and I didn't realize that there were all these, the Dance Express program and all the other things going on in the building. So it's been great as far as sharing resources, but it has been a little bit of an issue once in a while with closures.
So in a 1-year period, about how much money would a 1 mil generate?
So the 1 mil should generate about $527,000 each year, or for
Okay.
the first year.
All right, and so, and one of the things to understand is with any of these millages, when Headley and Proposal A kick in, they actually drive down what the millage can collect as the time goes on. So you
Correct.
may, by the end of it, only be collecting $500,000 or maybe a little less than $500,000. The cost of the new building you're looking at is approximately $4.2 million?
That's a very, very rough estimate.
Okay.
I looked at some of the recent constructions for libraries in Michigan and came up with that number. The architects that are working with us hope by the October library board meeting to have a better estimate for us on what the building we're looking for would end up costing.
Sure. So you would collect approximately $5 million over that 10-year period, and the building estimate right now is $4.2 million.
Right, and so if you figure in inflation,
Right.
you know,
Right.
yeah, and the library currently does have about $250,000 reserved for the new building in our reserve fund. So,
Okay.
so it's not like we're starting with nothing.
Sure.
And then, of course, there's the library, the Garden City Library Building Fund, which is a separate 501c3 organization. They've been doing small fundraisers. They've raised about $60,000 so far, just doing small fundraisers to keep people in mind of a new library,
Right.
basically.
Right. So to clarify for folks, even though the library is a part of the city, the library board is really its own standalone entity, and this library itself will really be, as it is now, really a standalone entity. Is that accurate or not?
Yes, and we'll still be a city department, but we will we'll have our own millage. Our board is elected. We'll have our own building. We'll be responsible for all the maintenance and care of the building. But we'll still be a part of the city as far as being a department, being
Right.
involved with helping make the city the best possible for the residents.
But I guess what I'm clarifying for folks so they understand, when the millage was passed for the operations,
Yes.
it sort of separated the library from the city's operations at that point, at least financially.
Financially, yes, and again, the board's now elected instead of appointed. But even as an appointed board, they were a governing board, so they had all of the same powers under.
Sure, and that has to do with state legislation,
Correct.
right? Okay. So if the average home value in Garden City right now is about $80,000, and you have to understand that these numbers are skewed because of the way the numbers are calculated by the state for the purpose of collecting taxes, then the taxable value of the average home, this loses everybody, or everybody gets lost on this, is really about $40,000 a home. So your home, if you're the average homeowner, is taxed at approximately $40,000 for the average Garden City house. So that means basically it would cost $40 a year additional for the average person. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. So it's $40 a year, which is about 11 cents per day by my calculations.
Okay. And you simply just, if you go onto the city's website, you look at the value of your home, you look at the taxable value of your home, you multiply that by, was it 0.001, I think?
Yes.
0.001, and you'll get whatever that number is.
And it's going to come out to be just a little bit higher than the existing library operating millage.
Which is also a mill, but was driven down by Headley in Proposal 1.
Exactly.
Or Proposal A.
So it's now 0.96 something.
Right, exactly. Okay. Is there a plan B? I don't know if I should even present that here, but is there a plan B should this not pass?
Well, we'll keep going forward looking for funding opportunities should this not pass. The good news is, whether or not this passes, the library remains open and will continue providing the excellent service that we've been doing.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, good luck with your millage campaign. We remind you, of course, November 5th is the day you can vote. Absentee voting is far less restricted now than it was in the past. There is, I guess we can call it no reason absentee voting. So if you'd like an absentee ballot, all you have to do is come into City Hall to the clerk's office. You can collect an absentee ballot, allowing you to vote anytime you want prior to the election. All right. That's it. Thank you very much for watching. Whatever you do, though, make sure you get out and vote on November 5th. Good night, everybody.